everybody's doing well. Wanted to jump on this live very quickly for a number of reasons, but one of the main reasons is because when I was live last week with a number of people that joined us on the live last week, I was asked a question. I was asked by a few of the people on the live, Samuel, tell the story, tell the story, tell the story. So as a result, I decided to jump in live today to share the story. So first and foremost, wherever you're joining me from, if you are joining me from any platform, let me know inside of the chat what platform you're joining us from. Official, Marv, welcome to the live. Everyone else who's on the live, welcome to the live. Wherever you're joining me from, welcome to the live. Throw in the chat where you're joining us from so I can welcome you. That would be absolutely awesome to just greet you and literally say to you, congratulations for being on the live, right? So what we're going to do in this live is I'm going to do the whole story time. I'm going to share with you guys exactly how my wife, quote unquote, convinced me, if that's the language you're going to use, to go from the goal, which was to have 3 children, which we discussed prior to getting married, all the way to what we currently have, which is literally 6 children. And more importantly, what all of that has to do with what basically ended up being part of our conversation, which was my wife wanting to have 8 children. So with all of that being said, let me say to you guys, welcome to the session. All right, welcome to the session first and foremost. Now, before we jump in, let me greet you guys. Let me welcome you guys. You guys let me know inside of the chat where you're joining me from in the UK. If you're joining me in the UK, where are you joining me from in the UK? Are you in Birmingham? Are you in Leeds? Are you in Crystal Palace? Are you in Manchester? Are you in Hertfordshire? Are you in Essex? Are you in London? Where are you joining me from? Literally throw in the chat. If you're joining me on IG, let me know in the chat where you're joining me from. If you're joining me on, actually our IG audience, a lot of them are from the States. So let me not ask you guys where you're joining me from that way. Let me ask you this way, all right? So guys, let me know where you're joining me from in the world. Are you in Australasia? Are you in Asia? Are you in America? Are you in the UK? Wherever you are, just let me know inside of the chat where you're joining me from so I can welcome you guys and welcome your side of town to being on the live. All right, now let's jump in. So some of this stuff I shared as a backstory in our session last week. In the session last week, I was talking about a whole bunch of stuff, primarily the fact that my son, I call him my baby, Dan, just turned 6. And I was basically asked, how can I be calling him a baby at the age of 6, right? 6 is apparently too old to be classified as a baby. So when Daniel literally turned 6, that was one of the reasons a couple of weeks ago that got me on the live. So I was just sharing with you guys just basically like where I'm at, what I've been doing, what I've been up to, and more importantly, like how fascinating it is to have a son who's literally turned 6, right? And bearing in mind, he is my 3rd son and 4th child, okay? And I kind of called him like a miracle child as well in that, all right? Welcome May to the live. I believe it says May. May, let me know. Hopefully I don't want to butcher anyone's name. Is it May? Is it Mary? Let me know. Welcome to the live. And feel free to let me know where you're joining me from as well on the live, and whatever platform you guys are on, feel free to throw in the platform as well. That's cool. So Daniel turned 6, our 4th child turned 6, literally about 2.5, 3 weeks ago. And with that happening, I was like, wow, like this is absolutely awesome. Let me jump on live. Let me share with people. Let me just add value to people as I used to do, because it's been like 2 years prior to that since I had been live on Facebook, and it'd been like a year prior to that since I'd been live on Instagram. So in my mind, it was kind of like, you know, I hadn't been live for so long, and it just kind of like reinvigorated me and energized me to be live and to say, look, let me connect with the community. Let me see where people are at. Let me see what people are doing and all of that jazz, right? As people say. So then what happened is, whilst I was on that live, I shared with you guys about what me and my wife did when we were planning and preparing to get married. And I spoke to you guys about how when Robbie and I were planning and preparing to get married, one of the things I said to her is we're not getting married unless we have 3 conversations. And I shared with you guys on that live what those 3 conversations were. If you guys want me to go through what those 3 conversations are, again, just put the number 3 in the chat and then I'll do that. And then after we spoke about kind of those 3 things, one of those things effectively was our goals and dreams. So what we did is we sat down, journal in hand, pen in hand, and we wrote down for an hour and a half every single thing we wanted to achieve with our lives, right? And this was a practice that I was already doing for a number of years. I calculated it the other day. I think it was 7 years before actually even like meeting or courting Robbie in our relationship. So we did it together. We did the goals workshop together. We sat down for an hour and a half and just wrote down everything we wanted to achieve with our lives, right? And we basically did that in silence, which was kind of weird, but it was what it was. And from doing that for an hour and a half, we then spent a second hour and a half writing down every single thing that we had written, or sorry, sharing with each other, sharing with each other every single thing we had written. So we had gone from writing down, you know, the kind of place you want to go to, the kind of place you want to move to. Like, we was just writing all of this stuff down. And then we went from writing this stuff down to literally sharing with each other, okay? So we spent 3 hours literally in that process, all right? Now, if you are watching this and you're thinking to yourself, that sounds valuable, like that sounds like the kind of thing a couple should do before getting married, because there is no school for marriage, right? Let me just tell you that. Most people are trying to learn how to be successfully married whilst being married, rather than actually preparing themselves through means of counseling, marriage counseling, relationship counseling, development, self-development, personal development, etc., right? So if you're someone who's literally tuned into this and you're like, Samuel, you know what, that sounds powerful, that sounds really valuable, just write the word value in the chat so I kind of get a census of where you guys are at in terms of your thoughts with that as well, all right? So that's what we did. So we basically said, look, you know, let's go for our goals. So we wrote them down an hour and a half. Then after that hour and a half, we then spoke for an hour and a half, sharing with each other every single thing we wanted to achieve in our lives. And that for me, which is super powerful, that specific experience was a confirmation of the fact that I was actually with the right person. Like, that was such a groundbreaking experience. And I think a lot of couples in their processes of courting, or a lot of couples in their processes of developing a relationship, or a lot of couples in their processes of just figuring out who they are and who their potential person is, don't actually understand how they can put in layers of activity that produce connectivity, right? Layers of activity that either produce connectivity or equally can produce disconnectivity, right? So if, for example, we did this goals workshop and from the hour and a half of writing things down, I discovered that, yo, like, this woman is like not aligned with me, that process would have been super helpful and that would have saved me so much time, right? Someone throw the word time in the chat, right? And just by virtue of the fact that I didn't have to waste all of my time courting this lady and then discovering, you know what, she's not the right person for me. Like, that was, again, super powerful. That was a time saver and thus a lifesaver. So for those of you who are in a process looking for your person, like, that's just one thing to think about. That's a little hack, 1 out of the 3 that basically I learned when I was super young, dragged to church. But again, it was super helpful for me in terms of the relationship. So that's what happened. So fast forward now to what we wrote. So one of the things we wrote, which was super like aligned, was we both wrote that we wanted to have 3 children, okay? We both wrote that we wanted to have 3 children. And I specifically wrote down that I wanted to have a daughter and then twin boys. And Robbie specifically wrote down that she wanted to have 2 boys, twin boys actually, which was funny, and then a daughter, all right? Let me even take a quick poll, right? Do you think, all right, I'm just asking everyone, guys, do you think, just type in the chat, yes, if you think it is right, or no, if you don't think it's right. Do you think it's right to kind of think about or plan how many children you want before you get married? You guys tell me, okay? Just let me know what you think, all right? Right now we're on 50-50, so yeah, I'm interested in seeing what you guys think. But again, throw yes in the chat if you think, yes, Samuel, you know what, that's super wise. It makes sense. Like, you should plan how many children you want, or no in the chat if you're like, no, like, don't ever do that. All right, so you guys vote. You let me know. Yes in the chat for those of you who think, yes, you should plan how many children you want before you get married. No in the chat for those of you who think, no, don't plan it. Just let it be serendipitous, random, whatever word you want to choose, like luck. Some people believe in that. Whatever you think, you guys vote in the chat, yes or no. And again, just throw your votes in the chat and let me see, right? So basically, that's where we were at, okay? We were in a place in our lives where we spent 3 hours writing down our goals in preparation to get married. And we both wrote down that we wanted to have 3 children. Robbie wrote she wanted to have twin boys and then a girl. I wrote down that I wanted to have a daughter, which we had first, Abigail. So I won, quote unquote. A daughter and then twin boys. Okay, so that's what I wrote. Now, we haven't got twins, quote unquote, yet. I'll say that, right? Because nobody knows what God wants to do. but God. So let God be God, right? So we don't currently have twins in terms of the 6 children we do have. But yeah, we got the order that I desired, that I wrote down in my journal, right? We got our daughter first, who's Abigail, and then we got our 2 oldest boys, okay? So this is why a couple of weeks ago when I went live speaking about Daniel being our miracle child, I shared it because Daniel literally was our 4th child. He was the child that we never wrote about in the journal. He was the child that Robbie said she wanted 3. I said I wanted 3. So to have 4 children, like, is a miracle because now we're bypassing what we desired. And I don't know about you guys, but some of you guys may have been in a position in your life where you've been like, you know what, I really, really want this. And then you get the thing you really, really want, and then God expands your territory. Or as the Bible says, he enlarges your coast, okay? And this is something that God does again and again. We see this in the Bible, right? So that was kind of our story, right? So when I was live last week and I was sharing with you guys that whole journey, you guys were saying to me inside of the chat, Samuel, share the story of how your wife, quote unquote, convinced you, and she didn't really convince me, but how she kind of convinced you to go from wanting 3 children to literally being on a journey towards potentially 8 children, but currently having 6 children, okay? In my young age, all right? I believe I'm young. You can tell me if I'm not. And yeah, let's give a prize. We'll give a prize to anyone who can guess my age in the chat, right? If you guess my age right in the chat and you're the first person to guess my age in the chat, we'll give you a prize as well, right? I'll give you a prize which has retailed in the past for £100, right? So we'll throw out £100 to someone for that. Now, so let's go. So you guys wanted me to tell this story, so let me tell the story, right? So it's a very simple story, but the story goes back to when we had our first child, which was Abigail, right? So we have Abigail, she's our first child, she's our first daughter. We get pregnant with her 7 months after getting married. So 2012, we got married in June, and 7 months later, Mrs. Akanwin is pregnant, and she's pregnant with our daughter, right? And, you know, fast forward the 9 months, it actually wasn't a full 9 months because Abigail came 4 months early. So fast forward to like 8 months on, and Robbie gives birth like 4 months before the due date. Sorry, 4 weeks, excuse me, 4 weeks before the due date. And when she gives birth to Abigail, about 3-4 days later, it wasn't literally even up to a week, around 3-4 days later, Robbie says to me, babes, I think I want more children, okay? Now, for those of you who are men in the house, right, you know that that's probably a very strange thing to hear from your wife or a woman days after she just gave birth. For those of you who are women in the house, you know even more than the men in the house that it's very super rare for a woman to be saying she wants more children a day or 2 or 3 after she just gave birth, right? Now, granted, there's a whole bunch of stuff I could even drop here, and I'm just gonna drop some sound bites real quick so you guys know this. One, Robbie took an epidural with our first pregnancy, and she didn't with any of the other 5 that came after, right? So going through that experience of having an epidural. 2, I guess this is a second soundbite, which is important. Robbie was induced without her knowing, okay? So my wife was induced without even knowing, all right? Some of you who have heard the story, you know that, right? So that's another crazy thing. So imagine, I don't even want you to imagine, but we're in a predicament where in 2013, my wife is induced without knowing because the medical professionals didn't clearly articulate that. As a result, the pain becomes unbearable through the delivery. And as a result of the pain becoming unbearable for her, she decided to take the epidural, right? So as a husband, I'm there supporting my wife, watching her go through this process, taking the epidural that she said she didn't want to take, literally being induced, and as a result, having effects like those of you who know, you know. And if you know, just write in the comments, I know, and having effects that literally only epidural produces. And I know that because my wife has gone on to then have 5 children since then and never gone through the kind of excruciating pain she went through when being induced, right? So the interesting thing is we're 4 days out, 3-4 days out from giving birth to our first child. And my wife comes to me and she says, babe, I want to have more children. Now, because I've shared with you guys the backstory, you guys understand this. You guys are already with me. You're like, okay, that makes sense because Robbie wrote down she wanted to have 3 children, right? And Samuel, I get it because you wrote down you wanted to have 3 children. So you've both written down you want to have 3 children. So Robbie coming to you a few days after giving birth and saying she wants to have more children isn't a problem, right? Well, it isn't a problem except the fact that when I said to her, okay, cool, like that makes sense. We said we both wanted to have 3. She then says to me, I'm not talking about 3. Okay. Now, this moment was a very interesting moment because she said to me she wants to have more children. We've both written down we want to have 3 children. And she's now said she's not talking about 3. So in my mind, I'm like literally confuddled. Okay. There's literally words I could use to explain this, right? But I'm literally confuddled. I'm like, I don't get this at all. Okay. So I then now say to her, like, Rob, so what are we talking about? Like, how many children do you want to have? And she says, I want to have 8 children. Okay. Now, 8 is the number 8. I don't even know how to start breaking this down or explaining this or expanding this, right? But I want you guys to think about this for yourself, right? You've just had 1 child. You shared that you want to have 3 children. And now you're saying you want to have 8 children, okay? Now, I don't know the connection. I know 3 times 2 is 6, okay? I know 1 times 3 is 3. I know 1 add 3 is 4, okay? So I can do a whole bunch of maths, but I didn't know how to get to 8. I didn't know what had happened to have my wife literally saying she wants to have 8 children. I was literally just confused. I'm just going to be totally honest, right? So I've now said to her, like, Robbie, what do you mean 8 children? Like explain, expand, like elaborate, like what's going on here? So she then starts to break it down. And what she basically says to me is, look, when she was growing up, she spent a lot of time with, she mentions these 2 friends, 2 close friends, right? 2 super close friends. And yeah, these 2 super close friends follow me on Instagram. So if you know who you are, you know who you are, and you can just throw those love hearts in the chat, right? And she said, like, when she was in that secondary school, she spent a lot of time with one of these close friends. And then when she was in university, she spent a lot of time with his second close friend. And she said both of these friends, both were one of 8 siblings. And she said whenever she would go to their homes, she would see that there was just like so much love in their house, so much like joy, so much celebration, so much peace like in their home. And she said like she loved that. But she said as a result of loving that, she really feels like God is using that to stir her heart and cause her to want to have 8 children. So I'm like in a catch 22, deuce, right? So why am I in a catch 22? This is why I'm in a catch 22, because she's literally telling me that this is God inspired. She's literally telling me that she believes God wants her to do this, right? So I was in a real seriously weird place, right? But the reason I share this story, and the reason why I was willing to share this story, and the reason why last week I even mentioned potentially coming on live this week to share this story, is because this story has so much more meaning inside of it once you start getting to the principles and the precepts behind it, and not just the actual story on the surface. So let's get into that. So I was struggling basically. Like when Robbie told me that, I'm going to be very transparent with you, like I was struggling. I didn't understand, like I was working as a teacher. I was on like probably 27,000 as a salary for the year. I think at the time Robbie was studying. She was doing her PGC, so she was qualifying to become a primary school teacher with a specialism in mathematics. Let's go. And at the time I was a secondary maths teacher. So as a result, like I didn't have like the finances, like it just didn't make sense to me. Like how are we having 1 child and days later you're telling me you want to have 8 children, and our goal or our plan prior to getting married was to have 3 children. So just super confusing. And guys, if anyone's ever been in a confusing predicament, like just throw me in the chat or I have in the chat so I know I'm not alone, right? Because that was like super confusing at that stage of my life. I just didn't even understand how to support my wife. I didn't understand like why she wanted this thing. Like in my head, it was just like, yo, this is different. Like this is super different. I just don't get it, okay? So from her saying that, something super powerful happened. Like because of that lack of clarity that I had, because of that, I guess, quote unquote, confusion that I was dealing with, I said, you know what, I'm going to take this opportunity to literally pray, like, and just ask God, like, yo, God, what's up, right? And I know some of you are very unfamiliar with hearing someone say something like, yo, God, what's up? But yeah, I'm a big believer in just speaking to God, like speaking to God, being transparent and just opening up your heart. So I kind of went to God and I was like, God, I don't understand this. Like my wife wants 8 children. We've just had our first child and our goal or our plan was to have 3 children. Like, help me understand this, okay? And I didn't get like a booming bass voice of God from the sky. I didn't hear God say, do this or do that. But what I got was some strong sense, right? And the strong sense was of a question. And I don't know about you, you might have had like a question in your head before like this, but the question was just like, why? Like, why? Why not? Why not 8? Okay. And I found it hard to answer that question. Like, seriously, like, genuinely, like, I found it difficult to answer the question, why not 8? Like, what makes 8 untenable in relation to 1 or in relation to 3 or in relation to any other number? Like, that was what was in my head. Like, why? Like, why is 8 an issue? Okay. So that was the first thing. Like, okay, why is 8 an issue? So from there, again, I guess, pressed on in seeking the Lord, praying, and trying to understand, like, yo, why is 8 an issue for me? And I came to a light bulb moment, a literal epiphany, okay? And the epiphany was that there's only 2 reasons why I would have a problem with having 8 children, okay? And I'm gonna share this with you. And guys, please bear this in mind, right? My story may not be your story, okay? Excuse me, my phone is popping off here. Like, my story is not your story, right? Your story is not my story, okay? And the hope and desire in life is that we can find enough examples or warnings, as I've learned growing up, so that we can make sure our stories are the best stories they can be, right? The whole mantra that they speak about today is, you know, be the best version of yourself. Well, the reality of being the best version of yourself is making sure you get enough examples. Hashtag Joseph in the Bible is an example, did things the right way all the way. Or get enough warnings. Hashtag Samson in the Bible is a warning. Okay, did the wrong thing enough times all the way to the end of the game, right? That you make sure your life becomes a life of an example, right? That's my belief. I started believing that at the age of 19 when I had to fix my whole life up from living life like a warning, if I put it that way. So welcome Jay Ofori to the live. So yeah, so guys, so based on that, we got to that place, we had that conversation, and I started to pray. I got kind of that clarity from God that, look, why not 8? And then the moment I got that clarity from God, why not 8 children? What I basically did is I started to think about it, and I realized that there were only 2 reasons why I would have an issue with having 8 children, okay? The first reason, let's go through the first reason. The first reason was love, okay? I realized to myself, one of the reasons why I may have a limiting belief or a hang up around having 8 children is because I may not love all 8 children the same, or I may not love all 8 children, okay? If someone understands what I'm talking about, just write in the comments, I do. So that was the first thing that came to me. And now, the moment that came to me, I just quickly brushed that off. I was like, bro, that is never going to be an issue. Like, even if I have 1 million children, right? I am going to love all my children because they're my children, right? They are my offspring. They're my next generation. They're who I build an inheritance for. Like, how could I have a child and not love my child, all right? So that's like numero uno, right? So the first thing that came to my mind was, Samuel, one of the only reasons why you wouldn't want to have 8 children is because you don't believe you're going to love them all, okay? So that's the first reason, right? That's the first reason. So I said to myself, all right, cool, like, I'm not that guy. Like, I'm not a guy who's going to have children and not love my children. So therefore, boom, that one goes out the window, okay? So we threw that one out the window. Then the next thing came up. And the reason I'm sharing this is because this next thing, I think, resonates and relates to many people. I think many of us who are tuned into this live, many who might watch this on a replay if a replay is available, and welcome again, lady, welcome to the live. Everyone else who's jumping on the live, welcome. Guys, throw in the chat when you jump in the live where you're joining from and just say hello, just say hi, you know, common courtesy, you know what we do. But basically, like, I said to myself, if the first reason why I wouldn't have 8 children is because I won't love them all, and that's a ludicrous reason because I'm going to love all my children, then what's the second reason? The second reason was money. Dun, 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 right? It was money. Like, that was the second thing that came to me. Like, Samuel, the only other reason besides a lack of love, and I'm using these words specifically because I want you to think about these words, a lack of love, right? Lack mentality. The only reason besides having a lack of love for your children why you wouldn't want to have more children, in my case, again, my story is not your story, is potentially because you're either not going to love them all, or you're going to be concerned about not having the money for them all, okay? Now, I could go down a whole rabbit hole, but I'm not going to for the sake of time, and just share a whole bunch of stuff. Now, I'm going to just drop some sound bites to help you guys. Like, the first one is the Bible says, lo, children are an inheritance from God, right? the Bible says like, blessed is the man whose quiver is full of children, right? So the point I'm making is like, biblically, there's only positive ramifications to having children. Now, please, please, please do not mistake me saying what I just said for a license or me giving you a license to say, yo, go have as many children as possible, right? Because if you're gonna be a deadbeat dad, then bro, like you're better off not even like engaging in that process, right? But again, scripturally, the Bible has nothing but positive things to say about child rearing and about parenting, right? Which is part of the reason why it's super crazy that we live in a world where there's such an aggressive agenda to basically murder children, okay? And it's funny, like I was reading in the book of Amos today, and again, it was just coming up, like people receive, like nations, let me not say people and you not get what I'm saying, nations receiving judgment because of the simple fact that they are killing babies, okay? And look, let's take a quick poll, right? Throw a yes in the chat if you think it makes sense for us to live in a world like we live in today, where there's such an aggressive attack on the murder of babies. Throw a no in the chat if you think, no, you know what, something needs to change, right? So yes, no, you guys vote, right? Whatever you think, okay? Because I'm open to seeing your views as well, guys. It's not just about what I think, right? I want to see what you think. Do you think that there is an aggressive attack in our society on children and basically children being murdered, okay? Some people call it abortion or other stuff, whatever, cool, right? Or do you think, no, like it's normal, like what's going on is normal, like it's just normal, like it should be how it is, right? So you guys can vote yes or no in the chat, right? Now, here's the thing that's interesting. So we just had our first child. My wife basically comes to me, she says, you know what, I think I want to have more children. She says she wants to have 8. And I go through this process of praying and saying, well, look, we desired to have 3. 3 is now turned to 8. How do I relate? Okay. And as I pray, I started getting that download that, look, Samuel, the only reason you wouldn't want to have 8 children is 1, because you don't think you're going to love them all. And then I rationalized like, yo, that's never going to be my story. That's not a problem for me. Boom, threw that out the window. And then 2, maybe because you think to yourself that you're not going to have the money to take care of them. And then obviously, like I shared a moment ago, guys, there's so many scriptural renditions of how children are a blessing. Okay. So that was what it was. It is what it is, right? So that was the process like that I basically went through. And like I said to you guys, this story has so much more deeper ramifications. And that's why I wanted to, well, that's why when the ladies asked me to share last week the story, I said I will share it this week. But not only will I share the story, I'll also, well, I didn't tell them I was going to do this, but I'll also pull out some of the nuggets and keys of wisdom, which I think are powerful for you and me in my life. Now, what that actual experience provided for me, it was what one pastor I used to work with called a checkup from the neck up, right? That actual experience helped me realize, Samuel, you were thinking from a lack mentality, okay? Now, obviously, the context I'm talking about is in terms of raising children or having children, but nonetheless, like that was the mentality I was having. And obviously, as Coach Laura Lau says, how you do anything is how you do everything, right? So, for example, if you're thinking in your brain in a lack way around raising children or having children, that can have a knock-on effect in terms of your wealth, in terms of your health, in terms of your relationships, in terms of all the other areas and cadres in your life. And I didn't want that to be my story. So I really had to reassess what I was doing. I really had to reassess how I was thinking. I really had to say to myself, again, check up from the neck up, like, Samuel, why are you living like that? Why are you saying to yourself that you're not going to have 8 children, which was the number my wife spoke about, like, because of money, okay? So that created a soul-searching moment. Okay. And I want to encourage you, like if you're tuned into this, if you're watching this live, or if you're watching this on a replay in any way, shape or form, and you're saying to yourself, you know what, it's true. Like I've been through things in my life where I've had kind of realization moments where I've had to realize like, yo, I've been thinking with a poverty mentality or a scarcity mentality. Like, here's my question to you. When are you going to change gears? Like, when are you going to change gears? When are you going to say to yourself, you know what, I realize I've been thinking like a poverty mentality, or I've been having a poverty mentality, or I realize I've had a scarcity mentality. When are you going to shift gears and say, you know what, I'm giving that up to take on an abundance mindset, or I'm giving that up to take on a wealth mindset, right? When are you going to do that? Because here's the funniest thing. Tomorrow's not promised and yesterday's gone. So I ask you the question again, when are you going to do that, right? For me, I got to do that in 2013. When I looked into the eyes of my brand new baby girl, And I said to myself, I don't think I can ever leave her alone. I don't think I can ever let her go. I think I have to literally protect this young girl, right? I had my first child. I'm staring in her eyes and I literally feel like I need to protect her. Okay, I don't even know what I needed to protect her from. That's just the overwhelming feeling I had when I had my first child. Now, if anyone's had a child, if anyone who's tuned into this live on any of the platforms is a parent, just write I am in the chat. And if you've ever experienced something like what I'm talking about, where you have your first child or you have a child and you look at them and you really feel like, yo, I need to protect this baby, I need to protect this child, just throw the word me in the chat. But that was literally what I went through in 2013. So a few days later, when my wife says to me, listen, babes, I want to have more children. And I'm like, yeah, we spoke about having 3. And she's like, no, not 3. I'm talking about 8. And I'm like, 8. And I'm like, yo, where's the 8 come from? And she explains the 8. Like, this is why that was such a profound moment for me, because as I started soul searching, I started realizing, Samuel, there's only 2 reasons why you wouldn't want to have 8 children. One reason, for me personally, one reason is because you feel like you're going to not love all of them, which I know is ludicrous, so forget that. And the second reason is because you're concerned about money. Now, here's the thing that's the reality. The Bible says the love of money is the root to all kinds of evil. Now, the reality is, if I was going to make a decision as important as child rearing based on money, I know I'd be making a massive mistake. So because of that, I decided I wasn't going to make such a massive decision based on something that's not as massive, i.e. money. And I decided to say to my wife, you know what, if you want to have 8 children, let's do it. So when some of you see my IG and you see me posting me with my 6th child, or you see me posting me with my 3rd child or 2nd child or 1st child or any of my babies, and yeah, I call them all babies, right? And you think to yourself like, yo, like, how's this guy doing this? Like, I'm going to tell you how I'm doing it. I'm doing it from the inside out. Someone write in the chat the word inside. I'm doing it from the inside out. I'm not doing it because I want to have 1,000 children and, you know, like, no, like I don't have that mentality personally, right? I wanted to have 3 children, right? I shared with you guys the story last week. And now this week I've shared the actual story of how me and my wife came to a place of agreement about it. But the point is, like, after praying about it and understanding that there's only 2 reasons I personally wouldn't want to have more than 3 children, and knowing and being clear on the fact that the only reasons were, 1, that I would lack love for them, which I know is not an issue for me, or B, I would actually have money as a primary factor over child rearing. Like, it was a no-brainer for me. It's like, yo, like, that's not gonna stop me. That's not gonna stop me. And if I'm gonna be totally honest, that's probably part of the reason why I had to get my act together and stop working for a salary of £27,000 in a whole year. I literally say that now and feel like, yo, was I really on that? Like, how did I get scammed that bad? And I had to literally transform into a person who could generate way more than that in a month. And that's not, again, me bragging. That's not me saying that to point a finger and say, oh, you need to fix up. That's me saying that to point a finger and saying, thank you, Lord, that I fixed up. Because I would never want to stay in that predicament that I was in. So guys, for those of you who are joining this live, if you got any value through me just sharing that little quick story time with you, throw the word value in the chat. If you're someone who's thinking to themselves, you know what, Samuel, I hear what you're saying. Like, I was in a position where I was challenged by something and it helped me highlight that I was having a scarcity mindset or a lack mindset, then I just want to congratulate you. I want to congratulate you because the first way that anyone can overcome any challenge is the awareness of that challenge. And the problem for most people is most people never, ever even become aware or never are honest with themselves enough to allow themselves to be aware of the things they're being challenged by. So if you're someone who today has been able to recognize, you know what, Samuel, in this area of my life, I've actually been having a limited mindset, or Samuel, you know what, in that area of my life, you know what, I've been thinking based on scarcity rather than based on abundance. I'm here to share with you today, I'm here to give you permission today to say it's okay to start walking in abundance in that area, whatever area that is. For me, I'm sharing with you 2013, it was child rearing, but it can be any area. It can be your finances, it can be your health, it can be your wealth, it can be your relationships. It's up to you. I don't know what it is. But if you are someone who's watching this right now and you're saying to yourself, you know what, Samuel, you're talking to me. Like, I've been in a place where I've been thinking of a scarcity mindset. I know there's more for me, but for some reason I haven't reached up to grab it. For some reason I haven't held on to it. For some reason I haven't taken hold of it. I'm here today to say to you on this live, you have permission okay? And you don't need my permission. You just need your own permission. But sometimes we need someone to tell us. We need someone to help us. We need someone to hold us a little bit accountable and just say, hey, bro, hey, sis, you know what? You have permission to go be great. So that's the life today, guys. That's the life. It's nothing deeper than that, guys, right? It's just that real. Like, you have authentic authority to go out there and win. Don't feel like you can't. Don't feel like you need to wait for the winning bus. Don't feel like you need to wait for the success bus. You don't need to wait for anything. You just need to wait for you to make the decision. And today, I hereby give you permission to make the decision to go and be great. So if you are making that commitment today, you're saying, you know what, Samuel, you know what, I heard you, I hear you, and I'm on the train. I'm on the great train. Just throw the word win in the chat, right? Throw the word win in the chat. And literally, don't throw the word win in the chat to write a comment in the chat. Throw the word win in the chat to make your declaration today. Your declaration that, you know what, I am going to win. I'm not going to be bound by the chains of scarcity and mediocrity. I'm not going to be bound by the chains of similarity. I'm not going to be stuck in the cycle of sameness, but rather I'm actually going to aspire to acquire higher. If that's you, throw the word win in the chat so I can literally celebrate with you. But guys, with all of that being said, I pray you got value from the live. If you did get value, you can feel free to write the word value, maybe even throw your key takeaway in the chat. If you're someone who wants to connect and talk a bit more, I don't know what your situation or scenario is, feel free to DM me. That's cool. Always an open ear. But side by side with that, guys, I just want to love you and leave you and say to you guys, take advantage of your advantages. Don't allow life to beat you up. Remember that it's small keys that open up big doors. Good day. God bless. See you on another live. Let's go.